Get ready to be inspired by the great things happening in rural education. The Rural Scoop will bring you new ideas and innovative solutions. We'll dive into education issues and we'll highlight what's working in your rural communities. You will hear from a variety of educators, administrators, professionals, and others who will provide relevant and engaging content in each episode. And now, serving up the scoop, here's your host, Dr. Melissa Sadorf.
Well, welcome to today's episode of the Rural Scoop. I am very honored to have a distinguished guest with me today. Arizona State Treasurer Kimberly Yee is joining me for a discussion on some tax plans that I think are going to be very beneficial to our rural school communities. Treasurer Yee has actually really made history as the first Asian American that's been elected to a statewide office in Arizona. And she's also the first Chinese American Republican woman to win a major statewide office in the United States. Her impressive career includes 8 years in our Arizona legislature. And during her tenure as treasurer, she has served in the administrations of first a former state treasurer and the past 2 governors, bringing a wealth of experience to public service. She is the current administrator of the AZ 529 Education Savings Plan, where she's been instrumental in expanding opportunities for our Arizona families to save for future education savings expenses, making higher education and vocational training certainly more accessible for all families, not just those in our rural communities. So, Treasurer Yee, welcome. I'm really looking forward to talking with you about the AZ 529 program and your vision for the future of education savings in Arizona.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, let's get just right into what we're planning on talking about today. And that is, can you explain to our listeners what the AZ 529 Education Savings Plan is?
The Arizona 529 Education Savings Plan is a state-sponsored tax-advantaged savings plan for families to start saving for their child's higher education expenses. And higher education can be so many different things, such as community college, universities, vocational school, workforce training, apprenticeship programs. So we really have been blessed to be able to administer the Arizona 529 Education Savings Plan. We actually just started it about 43 months ago in my office, the Arizona Treasury, but it's been around in our state for about 25 years. It was just housed in a small little government office that nobody really knew had it in their program for all of those years. So when I saw that we could do so much more with this wonderful savings plan, I actually went to the legislature and the governor at that time and asked that the 529 plan be moved to my office. And it was really wonderful because that was during October of 2020, in the middle of COVID. So right. There were no bells and whistles. There was no ribbon cutting. I literally just transferred the plan over to my office with no new staff. And we have, in 43 months, increased new accounts by over 41,000 new families. It's so exciting to see that we're roughly hitting about 1,000 new families per month to be able to open sometimes their first savings plan for their child's future. And it's wonderful because this is a state tax deduction. So it really is beneficial to these families. A husband and a wife can receive a tax deduction up to $4,000. If you're an individual filing, it's $2,000. But what I love about Arizona's plan, in comparison to maybe others around the country, is that there's no cap. You can have numerous beneficiaries and get that same tax deduction per beneficiary, and you can stack it. So that's what's really exciting about, I think, our growth in these wonderful savings plans. And it can be used for anything from books, computers, room and board, all of the things that are required for a higher education opportunity.
So, Treasurer Yee, do you know if there are more families in rural communities now than before that are contributing in this way?
Yes, very much so. We actually have a number of rural families that have been added to the program since we started going around the state, because I truly believe that we have had, intentional outreach to every corner of the state. It's so important that we don't just stick in one, a place in the state of Maricopa County or wherever. We need to get this out to every single family wherever they are. And I have gone to the Navajo Nation. I've gone to Yuma. I have gone to all Mojave County. I mean, it really has been an intentional effort to be able to bring new families into this program. And rural Arizona has so many wonderful opportunities for higher education and workforce training that really it has been wonderful to talk to our rural communities about this benefit. A lot of questions I get is, where can you use these funds? And how can, the funds be used? Let's just say you start saving and your child might go out of state for some reason. Can you use those funds in another part of the country? And the answer is yes. So it's exciting to see that as long as it is a higher education institution that is accredited anywhere in the country, they can use it for that. And so we have really done great work in terms of growing our rural community advancement for 529 significantly. Just to give you some numbers, our rural Arizona counties have seen significant growth we just compared this from the time we started running the program in October of 2020, because that's really when our numbers started. We have added nearly 5,700 new accounts since these 43 months. Rural Arizona counties have had extreme growth. It's excellent to see because we really have, like I said, prioritized that we go outside of Maricopa County to run this message. And of course, we're in Maricopa County running this message, but it really had not been done with that effort in those last 25 years before we took it over. And so it's really exciting to see.
So Treasurer, can you talk a little bit about those changes that you've implemented that have made the plan more accessible in those rural communities?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm the daughter of a public school teacher who taught in one of the lowest income schools in our state for 38 years. And so I come from that perspective that we really need to encourage higher education, whatever that higher education opportunity looks like for that child. And so I immediately changed the name of the 529 plan from what it had been called for 25 years. It was called the 529 College Savings Plan. So back then, they just thought it was for college. And so when I took it over, that perspective that I had was higher education is not just about universities and community colleges. It's lots of things, including in a growing state like ours, workforce training and apprenticeship programs, vocational schools. And so I immediately, when I changed the transfer of the administration from the Post-Secondary Education Commission office that it used to be in for all of those years to the Treasurer's office, I changed the name of the program to Education Savings Plan. And it really does create a more general approach of what education looks like. And so given that, beyond the change of helping people and families understand education is lots of things, we also wanted to put this into various languages. Because one of the things that I have found, particularly in a diverse state like we have in Arizona, is that we wanted to get this out to, for instance, the Navajo Nation. So we translated our brochures to Navajo. We also worked with our Latino communities and we put it in Spanish. And we now have a Spanish language website for those families. I have found that a lot of cultural groups don't necessarily trust the banking system, so they are not putting money aside to save and grow interest in a financial institution. They're just putting extra savings, say, under the mattress or in a cabinet, and it's not growing in time. So given all of those cultural aspects, I really wanted to change how we were going to pursue this from a messaging standpoint. I also added really less words in describing what this means and more pictures. Because when you see that a grandparent can open this account, but most people think, oh, it's just the parents that can open this account. No, lots of people can open this account. A grandparent can open it for a grandchild. An aunt and uncle who might not have kids yet, maybe they're not married, they can open it for a niece and nephew. So our photos that we advertise on marketing show older citizens with their grandchildren. at Christmas and at the holidays, we bring forward the idea of gift giving. This is not your traditional unwrapped present gift, but it's certainly a gift that is so meaningful, and you're leaving that behind for your child and your family. But what I have found post-COVID is that it really is even for those adults who are recareering and they want to go back into a new vocation. So they're using it for themselves. You can be your own beneficiary for a 529 plan and get your own tax deduction. Your spouse can get the tax deduction with you, and you're an adult. It doesn't have to be a child. So these are the things that we're talking about. They've never been talked about before. We also are bringing this to lower income families. So lots of times people, when they learn about these savings plans, they learn about the deductions. They may be at an income level where they have a financial advisor and can afford that. But for those who don't, we wanted to bring this to them. So we actually have advertised in many of our talks about how you can just put $15 a month. If that's what you have, that starts your plan. And it starts to grow even with $15 a month. And so it really is a type of savings plan for everyone. You don't have to be a sophisticated investor to be able to open one of these accounts. And I always say, because I speak to groups that are young adults as well, right? So they're starting their first jobs and they're excited. They're saving money for the first time. And, they say, well, we're not quite ready because we don't have kids yet. We're not married. We're not at that point. It's not the case, because you can actually open an account for yourself as, a young adult. You're starting your own job. You're starting your future. Put that savings plan in place. Put it under your name. And the plan allows for the beneficiary's name to be changed along the way, as long as it stays in the same family. So you can start interest earnings as your own 529 plan. And when you might have your first child in the future, you just transfer the name to your child and you've already started collecting the interest. So those are the things that we talk about all over the state. It's so exciting. I really do believe that the growth has been attributed to the great education and messaging that we have put forward with this wonderful plan.
And you've also made some recent changes in the plans to make them an even better investment. For example, there is a new ability to transfer remaining funds to an IRA to enhance the plan's value for families. Can you talk a little bit about some of those changes that you've done to increase the value of these plans?
Yes, one of the things that we had heard from a lot of families is, well, how do I know my child's future? What if they don't go to college or do this higher education savings plan and I put too much money in? That was always the question. And certainly it's a valid question. You don't know how much really might be needed because you don't know your child's future. So this really settles that, the questions that people had as far as how much money, if there's leftover, what do I do? Well, Secure 2.0 was put into place. It started January 1st of this year, that allows families to transfer any leftover funds from an AZ 529 plan to that beneficiary's Roth IRA, retirement savings plan. So it's wonderful because you can put up to $35,000, transfer it over from whatever is left over from a 529 plan into that beneficiary's retirement. And everybody needs retirement. So there really has been some great changes to create that flexibility. And, there's always been the opportunity to have the beneficiary's name changed to another family member. Let's just say there were leftover funds prior to the Secure 2.0. They could have always moved it to another sibling or to themselves for continuing education, those types of things. But this really does keep that beneficiary's name on and then transferred over to a Roth IRA for the same for the same beneficiary, but then for retirement instead of education. And so that has been in place since January 1st. There are some things, though, to keep in mind that you have to have that 529 plan in place for 15 years in order for you to transfer to a Roth IRA, because it has to be longstanding. So that takes us right back to the earlier you start a 529 plan, the better, because you are able to benefit this way in transferring over to a Roth IRA. Also, they want to make sure that you are contributing in the 5 years prior to that transfer, that it's active and things like that. So there's lots of little things that you just have to keep in mind. We have a wonderful website for families who are interested in 529s that answers like the Q&As that are most commonly asked. And it really does allow for, say, that early investor, they've never done this before. They want to be very conservative in their investment portfolio. We have a plan for them. If you're a little more sophisticated and you're comfortable with some, certain types of investment portfolio ideas, those are for others, and we have a plan for them. So we have lots of different sets for families that they can choose according to their comfort level. But we really love this 𝐂𝐤𝐞 2.0, and we're continuing to work on ways that we can have flexibility for those who might be going back to school. They're adults. They might have childcare issues that are keeping them from going back to school. So I have been appointed to a national 529 savings group that is across the states. And we're talking about going back to the Hill, Washington, to create new measures of flexibility to use 529 funds, for instance, for childcare related issues for those older students going back to school. And then that would allow them to have the time to take more classes and advance their higher education.
That brings up an interesting question. Is there a difference in Arizona's plan as far as tax benefits compared to those in other states?
Yes, every state is unique. So most states have the 529 state-sponsored plan, but their tax deductions are unique to their state. So, for instance, ours is $2,000 per individual filing. It's $4,000 for a married couple who files for one beneficiary. We don't have caps on the beneficiaries. So it can be, if you have two kids, that's $8,000 for a married couple. If they're both kids are beneficiaries on a 529, that's really great. For Arizona, that's great. And we actually have been recognized for these recent changes that we've made that create more flexibility. And we actually won a great recognition. It's called the People Pillar. Morningstar rates all states for their 529s. And we went from the time I've taken it over in October of 2020 to last December when they were rating us. They increased our score from bronze to silver. So I was really proud of that. And we can still get to gold. There's only 2 states in the country that are at gold. But we, in that short period of time, just 40 months or so, went from bronze to silver because we've made such significant changes, I think, for the better. And they have seen the significant growth of families. Again, 41,000 families have been added in just 43 months.
So Treasurer Yee, you mentioned, of course, that students can use it for college benefits. But one of the things that we focus on in our rural communities really is workforce development and supporting workforce within our communities, because it really is the lifeblood to keep those communities thriving. Can you talk a little bit about how the plan can support students that are pursuing a non-traditional post-secondary education, especially in our rural places?
Yes, and that is so important for a growing state like ours, because we know that with a pro-growth state like Arizona and our wonderful rural communities across our state and the fantastic vocational programs that we have in rural Arizona, this is the plan for families to really look into, because we have the ability to use the funds that are saved from, let's just say it's birth to age 18. And let's say it's $50 a month at a 6% roughly, interest earning. You have about $19,000 in the bank ready to go for that workforce training program. And that is not only significant to paying for a full workforce training program, vocational school opportunity, or apprenticeship program, but you are giving your child the ability to start saving early on and not get into debt at that point in time when they are just starting, right? They're starting into the real world. The last thing you want for them is to be struggling with their finances. So you're really at the very beginning giving them the gift of being able to just right into the future and their future job opportunities, have that workforce training. And from an employer standpoint, these employers across the state are going to be getting a higher qualified workforce if they go into a higher education program, whatever that looks like. And that employee who's getting that higher education training is going to be better on that job. And as consumers, we will have better service. We're going to have better products. So it really works to the benefit of the entire state, our economy, and the ability for families to set that money aside and not be in debt. It's such a great program. I really wish we had done this sooner, in terms of bringing it to every family in Arizona. But I'm blessed to have been able to do that in this very short period of time since I've taken it over. And one of the things I learned was, when I started the state treasurer's position in 2019, this is again before COVID, I was going to national conferences across the country. And when you go to these workforce types of conferences, they have different pull-out panels and conversations and discussions with other individuals that are in your position. So I was working with other state treasurers across the country, and they would have these pull-out sessions on 529 plans. And I thought, my goodness, probably more than 50% of state treasurers across the country were running 529s. But for 25 years in Arizona, they weren't being run by the state treasurer. And so I immediately came back to Arizona from those conferences. I talked to at that time, it was the governor, Doug Ducey. He had been the previous treasurer of Arizona, as you remember, before being governor. And so he immediately recognized, I said, Governor, do you remember those savings plans that all those other state treasurers across the country were running? I said, we don't have it in our office. I would like to be able to run that. And he immediately recognized the 529s and their opportunities to be able to really advance in an office that's already talking about money. I mean, my office talks about financial education every day. I created a platform for financial literacy and helping families already in just simple tips on how they can save and spend and do that wisely. So this falls right into line with that same approach of helping families to be better equipped to manage their money. And I believe there's a direct correlation between how a family understands their financials to the greater fiscal health of the state of Arizona. And when those two go together, we can be successful together. So that really has been a great opportunity for my office to just go around the state and talk about 529 plans, but also just simple financial tips, especially in this inflationary environment.
So true. Here's a two-part question. And I know that you probably have multiple stories, but can you share some success stories from your outreach, especially from our rural communities? And then also, what are some of the challenges that rural families have encountered when they're trying to navigate the 529 plans, and how has your office helped them with that?
Yes. Oh, I have wonderful stories from all over the state. I guess I'll share one story that I had. It was just within this last year. We do an amazing program with children. And we engage young kids in classrooms about what their dream job is in the future. Because when they think about their dream job, as a child would, right, we engage them in a contest that, let's just say it's an art contest. They draw on paper what they want to be when they grow up. And when they do, we ask them to think about what it will take to get to that dream job. What education will you need to become a veterinarian? What is it going to be to become that medical doctor? And we have so many wonderful dream job ideas when we take this to our kids. And then we approach them with, okay, if you draw on this paper in an art contest, your ultimate dream job and what it will take to get there. And you talk to your families about what it might take to save money to get there with a 529 plan. We will choose, let's just say, and we do this basically every quarter, 15 winners from around the state, meaning 15 counties, recognizing all of Arizona's rural counties in the winners. And we will give them $529. And that either opens a new plan if they don't have one, or it adds $529 to an existing savings plan. And so one of the questions I had in Mojave County when I drove there and talked to a few classrooms was, the little boy said, you came all the way out here from Phoenix to tell us about this program? And I said, I sure did. And I am so glad to be in front of you face to face to share this with you. And he says, well, my question is, if I participate in this and I submit my art contest and I win, I don't think I'm going to have a way to get to Phoenix to pick up my check. And we honor these wonderful children with a physical, gigantic check. at the state capitol, and we invite their families and their school administrators and whoever it is that they'd like to be there. We bring them to our office and we have a wonderful celebration. And so his question was valid. How is he going to get all the way from Mojave County to Phoenix, Arizona at the state capitol? And I shared with him that we will get him transportation if you win. And it was one of those simple questions that a kid would ask, but so valid, because in rural Arizona, you get questions like that. It's basic, transportation. Why did you even come all the way out here? And I want to share with them, it's so important for us to not only share this with our rural Arizona communities, but to physically be there to share it with you. And to be able to share face-to-face that this is a program not just for those who are in Maricopa County or Pima County, it is for every county. And that's why I intentionally added 15 county winners representing all 15 counties. I also have really celebrated the fact that we have lots of different types of schools in Arizona. So all of the winners, every time we have a contest, we ensure a winner is represented from not only a traditional school district school, but a charter school, a homeschool, a private school, and a tribal school. All of those have to be among the winners because we really do celebrate in Arizona unique educational opportunities around our state that should be celebrated. So we've had winners from tribal nations that have come, and I love it because there was one little boy who he drew a really beautiful red mountain, which was part of his community. And on the day of his award, when he came to the Capitol, his family made him a traditional costume a traditional design for his outfit to wear for being presented that wonderful award. And it was just gorgeous to be able to see the commitment by the families once, we have selected them and they come and celebrate their wonderful ability to just celebrate the 529 plan with them. And oftentimes, again, these are families that are just opening brand new plans. And your second question was, how do we navigate families who might have questions on maybe barriers to 529? And that question really is significant because that's what we have done to ensure that this gets to them. We have not only done brochures, which are sort of the traditional brochure that you have in hand, but in today's communications, you really have to put it on different types of formats so that it gets to rural, so that it gets to those who might be in communities that may not have social media. They may have radio. They may be better with those printed materials. And so we have various ways to market and advance this external message to the families in rural Arizona that fits that particular community. When I went to, for instance, I was in Wickenburg just a few days ago, and I sat there and we talked about the different ways that they communicate. And there's lots of different ways that we should be able to advance this message. And again, one of the things that I intentionally do is to find pictures that help our, let's just say welding. Welding is a very important skill that in a growing state like ours is absolutely needed. In fact, some of our manufacturing corporations that are being built out are being slowed down because there are shortages in certain workforce training and their capabilities because we just have shortages in those areas. Well, welding is one of those areas that we have to continue to pursue and encourage individuals to get into. So we put pictures of welders on our marketing materials so that we encourage kids, hey, this is an area you might be interested in, but not stopping there. I have asked, for our marketing materials to have female welders in those pictures because we want to advance the idea that, I'm a big STEM supporter in science and technology, engineering and math. We have shortages of females in STEM related occupations. And so I ask that the photos be, placing young girls and women in these photos because we want to help encourage them to get into these industries as well.
I so appreciate that. So thank you for that, especially recognizing that diversity is so important to a thriving state like ours.
It is.
What kind of response and participation have you seen in your contest applications and contestants?
Well, as mentioned, we have an art contest that's at the beginning of the year. In the fall, we open up an essay contest to help kids write what they want to be when they grow up in a little short essay. And then in the summer, which is happening now until June 9th, we have a photo contest, which allows kids to take pictures, either a selfie or someone takes a picture of them in their dream job outfit or whatever. Maybe it's someone who likes astronomy or, different things. They can take pictures in a unique way to showcase their dream job. And we have literally received 600 plus applicants in certain categories. I mean, that's a lot considering we are just starting these 529 contests. And it's very difficult for our wonderful judges to be able to select just 15 winners sometimes when you have 600 plus applicants to some of these contests. But what we do is we really do find ways to talk to children. And again, we do different grade levels. I can start as early as kindergarten to talk to kids about savings in a way that is meaningful to them at that age. So if it's for a child who is very young, maybe they're kindergartners, first graders, second graders, we want to talk about the idea that money doesn't just come from the sky. You actually have to work for it. Do you do chores around the house? Do you get paid for those chores? And if you do, you really learn to appreciate the money you earned and worked for because it's more valuable to them when it is worked for and earned versus just getting it from somebody. And so I encourage that work responsibility early on and understanding that there are different ways to use your money. Obviously, the piggy bank savings is something that young kids understand, that money aside and save it for something that is of value later on, but you have to be very patient. But we actually do talk about spending. And when we spend money, it's okay, but we have to spend it wisely. Otherwise, you end up buying something that doesn't seem like it's very important a week later. And that's called buyer's remorse. And adults get into that all the time. And so we will talk also about the importance of giving back. So sharing that money and being able to understand, yeah, it's your money, but you can also give this back to those who are in need or your church or those types of important causes that are meaningful and help others. So there's lots of ways to teach young kids about how they spend money, save money, and share their money. And again, I go through even through high school, because in high school, you can talk a little bit more about the idea of putting that money aside for the real world, because soon they will be off into college. And as emerging adults, that's when young people get into debt very, very quickly. We don't want them to get into debt because it's very hard to get into, you get into that spiral of debt. It's very difficult to get out. So helping what I call emerging adults understand the very important understanding of working for your money, but putting that money aside for a rainy day is something that is of such value. And so we actually put together in my administration early on 2019, a task force. It's called our Financial Literacy Task Force. I brought various individuals from various industries that understand the importance of money management around the table, from our K through 12 communities to military families, what I call vulnerable populations, maybe those who work with those who are on government subsidies, to our rural communities. Our Navajo Nation president is actually a member of our task force. And around the table, we talk about how we continue to advance financial education across the state in meaningful ways. One of the bills that we passed was to take to the legislature, and it was signed into law in 2019, that requires during a high schooler's economics semester that they also have financial education embedded in that semester. And this allows for our high school teachers to be able to showcase that life skill of financial understanding of money management in that econ semester. But we want to take that further to have a standalone financial literacy course for every child in high school. And so we are working currently with the State Board of Education to try to move that forward. And we always call on those who want to help us advocate for this to just call our office and let us know, because we really want to push that advocacy to our school districts that understand that this is a life skill. It's one of the most important skills that you can have coming out of high school. So really having a standalone course, whether it be in your math course or something else, but to have that significantly understood before graduating will take a young student a long way into adulthood. So that's something that we will continue to advance. We already started the conversation with the State Board of Education in January of this year, and it is ongoing, but we need as many advocates around the state as possible.
You mentioned that you work with young children to ensure that they have a sense of money and savings. And how do you involve families, parents, in ensuring that they're involved in that conversation at the home as well?
It's so important. And that's something that can be fun. Money can be even intimidating for adults, as we have found. So to make it something that a family can participate in is something that would be engaging and everybody would participate. So for instance, we're heading into our summer months right now. A lot of kids are out of school and families are kind of thinking about, well, what are we going to do for the next couple of months as we have a little more time together? And maybe it's vacation time, right? What a perfect way to plan an outing with a family and saving the money together. This is something that can be, sophisticated if you want to be, but it could be very simple, like maybe a little getaway staycation around somewhere in Arizona, and you get away together. But in order to do that, you put money on sort of in a savings plan so that you can have those little extras in that project. So let's say you want to go to the Grand Canyon. Well, you're going to have to have a place to stay at the Grand Canyon. How much is that going to cost? Well, together as a family, let's take a look at the different hotels around there or the camping areas. Maybe that's something that the family can plan together. But it's fun because the kids are going to be engaged. They're going to be excited about that trip. And then you have to start asking, okay, well, what do you think that we're going to need to buy on this trip in order to prepare for it? And then maybe take them to the store with you or go online together. These are the things we're going to need to be able to plan for this great getaway. And start putting that on a piece of paper. This is what we're going to need for this. This is the food. This is maybe the fun things that we might be able to get. Maybe it's rocks or something you want to collect up there that you can buy at the store. Those are the things that you can put on paper, and it creates a fun way for a family to engage together. The other thing I say, which is all year round, is let's say you put together a savings account for that. Let's just say it's called a vacation savings account, right? And it's something you don't touch until maybe once a year. But you go to the financial institution together to open this account so that they can see you're opening this account, not for yourself, but for your family. Take them with you when let's say you get your paycheck and you're going to put $50 a month in every single month for this savings account. Why not bring your child with you to the financial institution to show them that you're putting $50 a month to save? And then a few months later, or maybe a year later, show them how much interest was collected on that account. And it's showing them at an early age that they are participating in a family savings account that is working. And what a great way for a child to go, I get it. This is something that's important. My parent taught me this at an early age. And that's something that a family can participate in. Again, this is the perfect time for it because it is the summer months and this is that extra time you have to be able to give this wonderful skill. And for me, I always like just for daily chores or weekly chores for my kids is I give them something to do. Let's just say it's wash the car, right? You want them to do something around the house. It's showing them personal responsibility, but it's also giving them maybe the benefit of a few dollars, right? We collect that not in a piggy bank that you can't see. It's ceramic and you don't know how much is in it, It's in a plastic Ziploc bag. So they can see it grow physically in that period of time. They're seeing, oh gosh, it's $5 today. It's going to be maybe a few extra dollars next week and more and more. And they're getting excited because they're physically seeing the money collect in that Ziploc bag. Well, I will give them opportunities to say, go to the dollar store, because the dollar store, well, these days it's like $1.25. It's not $1 anymore, but it's an easy way for them to see their dollars go per item. And that is something that is an early skill that they can learn, but it also shows them the cash approach to spending versus the credit card approach, which can get very dangerous for our young children. So when they see that physical cash is used and your money goes down each time you spend, that's something that's very, very meaningful for them to learn early on. And soon later, they will say, well, we've pretty much exhausted our options at the dollar store. Can we go to a different store and get bigger items and better items? And of course, the other stores down the street are going to have a much bigger toy section. And I will say, yes, absolutely, we can. But the money in that little Ziploc bag is going to have to expand a little because those toys cost more. And that will take more time to save, which means patience. So these are the types of things that I personally teach my children. And I think that it's fun. It does help them understand a very important skill at a very early age. But just speaking of our adults, because I think that's really important. This is something that I talk about with lots of different age groups. And we have those who are on government subsidies. They're adults. They've been on welfare-related subsidies, maybe for generations in their family. We want to help them. It's not too late. So what I did was I went to the legislature and I asked the Department of Economic Security, which rolls out government subsidies from the state to these recipients. And they have to have workforce training, workforce requirements in order to be on the rolls. I asked them, well, what are those workforce requirements? And they had a list of things that they're supposed to do. Financial education was not on that original menu. So I went to the legislature. The governor signed it at that time. 2019 was when we passed this bill. And with our wonderful task force advocating for this, we put on the books that if you are on welfare programs in Arizona and with the Department of Economic Security, they have added financial education coursework to workforce requirements when they are required to do the work to be able to be on the program. And that goes a long way, right? Because if they get their jobs at some point and are in the workforce again, they will hopefully be able to be self-sustaining and understand how they better manage their money so that they don't get back onto the rolls again. And I think that's a benefit that will go a long way as well.
Sure. And then also modeling for those around them at the same time, which is a benefit that is a secondary benefit to them.
That's exactly right. Yes. So we have these wonderful contests on our website, az529.gov. And there are a lot of different ways that we also present to our various groups. As mentioned earlier, we have financial literacy tips and resources for military families, vulnerable families, K through 12. And these provide tips not only for savings, but also benefits that might be available for them. Let's say their military benefits. For senior citizens, we have tips to avoid financial fraud, which big scams that are online these days. And those tips can be found on our Arizona Treasury website. And that website address is aztreasury.gov. So it's a different website than our 529 plan. But aztreasury.gov actually provides a financial education resource center that allows for you to navigate different ways to be better with your money.
Can you give our listeners the AZ529 plan location as well?
Yes. AZ529 plan information is on az529.gov. So the two websites to remember today are az529.gov for those education savings or aztreasury.gov for general financial education tips for families. And we have wonderful resources there. We showcase what I do just as state treasurer is we manage the money for our local governments, and rural Arizona is significant to that. For instance, we invest funds for our cities, towns, and local municipalities. Rural Arizona is significant to that. In fact, in my first year as treasurer in 2019, I visited all 15 counties regularly. I was the first in Arizona history to be a treasurer, to go pretty much across our state, zigzagging around. Really, face-to-face meetings matter. And I wanted to help our rural counties understand that while we are managing their money, it's really important to make sure we are advancing their dollars and expanding them in ways maybe they hadn't ever thought of before, because economies change year to year. And as any financial, investor does, you move your money around based on what's happening. And so we wanted to make sure we had a longstanding relationship that is face-to-face with many of our client, what we call local government investment pool clients. And so our local government investment assets under management have increased by 120% under my administration. And that means there's more money coming in from rural Arizona to the Office of the Treasury for us to invest, but it means much more money back in terms of the investment performance, because as we have grown our local government investment pool, that means more money back to everybody who is participating. So more roads, more transportation, education, infrastructure that's needed in our rural Arizona counties. And that's good for everybody. So we're really proud of not only the work, but you don't sit there and make it happen. You actually have to work for it. So oftentimes I'm just on the road going to, a community where when I enter, they're like, we were just expecting your finance director, not you. And it's like, no, I want to be here with you and be a part of this discussion. And that's really exciting because we're talking right there in the middle of a community so that I can see around, what's happening in that economic environment. And it's not going to be, and you can't assume that it's going to be the same as the county next door or the county 5 down, to the south. It really is something we have to be able to see with our eyes. And when we're talking about the economy or real estate or other things that are beneficial to the state in general, oftentimes it's overlooked that we aren't talking about, the entire state from an entire a geographic area. We're only talking about certain subgroups, right? And you can't do that. We shouldn't be doing that. We have to take a look at every single county uniquely because everyone is uniquely and beautifully different. So that's something that I have really taken a careful look at, but look at the results. 120% assets under management growth is huge. And again, that's more money for rural Arizona.
One of the questions that I always ask my guest, Treasurer Yee, is what do you think the rural advantage is here in Arizona? What does that mean to you?
Oh, the rural advantage. Well, for one, I believe that rural Arizona is significant to the economic viability of the state. And that cannot be overlooked. We have so many wonderful homegrown small businesses in Arizona that have their unique story. And they've been around for generations. And, I come from a family background of business owners. My grandparents started their little grocery store in the 1930s, and it stood on the same corner for 63 years. It was family run, and literally generations went through that store, not only from the cash register side, but also the customer base side. And so when you talk to those who have come in and out of our family's grocery store for over 60 years, I will say be speaking at a commencement ceremony, like 60 years later, right? And there will be a grandparent who used to be a little girl who would be a shopper at the store. And she would give me a story about that. And those are the conversations that you have when you talk to small business owners and families who are just making a huge difference in every community in our state. And so when I think of rural Arizona, I think about the individuals and the unique stories that we have to share, because Arizona, I believe, is a unique and beautiful state, and rural is absolutely the backbone of all of that. And so I'm proud of it, but I also feel that we have to protect it. So when we have conversations in the Capitol corridor, we have to bring rural Arizona to the table. And you can't just invite the people who have, offices down the street. You have to, when I plan meetings or these award ceremonies for families across the state to bring their kids, we don't plan it at 8 a.m. because that means a family might have to leave at 6 a.m. to get on the road to get to the Capitol. So I'm always mindful that when we plan meetings for involving rural Arizona families, we give them that drive time. Maybe it starts at 10 o'clock time or an 11 o'clock time, to be able to give them a meaningful, amount of time to travel to get to the place where we're having that meeting. Or maybe we're not having the meeting at the Capitol. Maybe we're having it in a rural county that is going to be closer to them. Those are the things that we need to really kind of bring into the policymaking conversation, because it really does matter who's at that table, and their voice is very, very important.
Well said. I appreciate that. Well, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to highlight about the work that you and your office are doing?
Well, we really have touched on so many wonderful things. I just continue to encourage families to think about how they can engage their young children, or let's say their grandparents and they're thinking about their grandchildren. Aunts and uncles can really have fun, meaningful ways to talk to their young nieces or nephews about money management. But the savings aspect that we started this conversation on is so important, especially today, because we're in an environment where we just don't know what that financial future looks like. So how important is it to be able to set aside savings so that you have that rainy day fund? When you don't expect that expense to happen, you're going to need some funds available to be able to fix whatever it is. And to just be able to teach these simple concepts it helps families go a long way. But especially now, we really are kind of at a point where, you don't know what a year looks like from now, in terms of the financial standing of you as an individual, to your family, to the economy and the state or the country. And those are the things where, the safest and most conservative thing to do is to just put some money aside if you have it. And even better, put a savings account aside for, education and those other things. We have a $1.7 trillion student debt problem across the country, and that's not going to go away. It just gets worse every single year. So for your children, and as a parent myself, that is a huge gift that you can give them, even if it's only $15 a month, to be able to set that aside and allow that to gain interest over time is going to be a huge gift that you're giving your child and their future.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And if you wouldn't mind providing those websites one more time for our listeners, because I know that there are going to be many that want to follow up on the things that we've talked about.
Absolutely. Well, if you'd like to open up or learn more about a AZ 529 education savings plan, please visit az529.gov. But if you're interested in learning about the Office of the Arizona Treasurer and the Arizona Treasury, what we do, and financial education tips on how to save and spend wisely, and those can be found at our financial education portal at aztreasury.gov. So 2 websites to visit. And again, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today.
Thank you for spending the time.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rural Scoop. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, or even leave us a comment. And be sure to follow on Twitter at Dr. Sadorf. That's Dr_SADORF, so that you never miss a new release. You can also check out previous episodes of The Scoop wherever you get your podcasts. Production support for the Rural Scoop is provided by Chattanooga Podcast Studios. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. See you next time for more great discussions about rural education.